Welcome to 28.5 Women's Basketball, where we explore a unique and authentic perspective on the women's game, break down upcoming matchups, and discuss the latest news and trends in women's basketball. We are your hosts. I'm Sydney Story, and I played basketball at the University of Tennessee under Pat Summitt.
And I'm Becca Goodman, and I played at the University of Notre Dame under Muffet McGraw. And we're thrilled to have you join us today. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy what you hear, be sure to tune in each week and don't forget to follow, download, and listen to give an assist and share the love. Now let's get started with today's episode.
Becca, how's it going your way?
Oh, Sid, things are good. Things are good. We're going to have a rough first half here, but other than that, things are good.
We do have two halves today. The first one is a sore subject, but part of the game. I don't know.
It is.
It is. It's part of being number one. You definitely have that giant target on your back. There's extra incentive for anyone to come in and try to knock off the number one. So that's a tough spot to be in for anybody. So feel the pain there a little bit. We are going to jump right in. We do have two halves today. As we already alluded to, we are going to talk about the Notre Dame versus NC State game in the first half here. Oh. And then, I know, tear for the
home team, the good guys.
Yeah. Oh, man, for the team you played for there, Beck. And then our second half, we have a new top 25. We want to walk through some of those mix-ups and changes that have happened in the top 25 and really talk about the end of conference play here. We've got a slew of games that are going to happen this weekend that really will seal the deal for conference play heading into the conference tournament next week. So action-packed weekend ahead of us. And then we've got a fun overtime out there that will end on a fun note. So I'll turn it over to you, Becca, and we can get going.
Yeah. So Sid, as you mentioned, it's hard to be number one. It is, right? There's a target on your back every day. Every time you go to practice, it doesn't have to be a game. You go to practice, the other team is knowing they're not the number one seed. They're going to try to go out there and beat the number one seed, right? So as we're talking about, Notre Dame lost in 2 overtimes to NC State. ND came into this game, obviously, number one, first time under Coach Ivey. A win would have absolutely clinched the ACC regular season outright. That would have been great. NC State had won 15 of their last 16 games. They had lost to number 9 at the time, North Carolina. Then they followed up by beating a number 20 Georgia Tech before playing the number 1 Notre Dame. So think about that. That's back-to-back-to-back ranked opponents. And games that are huge for the conference for them. We've mentioned before, Notre Dame has a really hard, easy to look over these games, but 3 ranked opponents to finish out the ACC. So after this NC State game, they still have number 24 Florida State to play and the new number 25 Louisville, who's making me nervous. So this game was off the charts. It was blow for blow. Tons of energy. It was at NC State. It was College Game Day, which is a really cool thing that ESPN and the crew are starting to do, where they come out an hour before the game and just highlight the players, talk about it. You just really get the arena involved. The cool part is when Notre Dame plays Louisville on March 2nd, a Sunday, this coming Sunday, that's also going to be College Game Day again. So they're going to run it back, come out to Notre Dame. We're also having an alumni weekend for that game. So a lot of alums are going back, get to watch the game, bring the family, and just to be a part of it. So expecting a great game and a great time. But let's get back to this game. I'm going to give props where props are due, without a doubt. NC State, a team that we knew could lock up on the defensive end, but were iffy when it came to offense. And I'm not saying as of late, right? They've kind of really found their ebb and flow. They've been rolling as of lately, and they've had a lot of guards that are stepping up and really carrying the weight on their shoulders. They played out of their minds. They played out of their minds. 5 players in double figures while shooting 46% as a team from the floor. Let me also highlight, they made a 24 out of 26 free throws. So everything was clicking for them. NC State came to play. It was at home. I mean, they were just killing it. It was blow for blow. This game had 21 lead changes. 21. That is a back and forth battle. At times, NC State would get up 5, ND would come back. It was just a game of runs, and that is what makes good teams great, is if you can withstand runs and then go on your own. NC State's 6'6" freshman Tilda Trigger came in averaging 6.4 points a game, went off. This girl had 19. Zoe Brooks, who one of their main guards, had a career high 33 points, 10 boards. Asia James, 20 points. Rivers had 14. Hayes had 13. Everybody was scoring and then some. The craziest part is both teams, neither one of them really went to their bench. I find that just crazy to have that high of a scoring game into 2 overtimes, right? Getting exhausted, that definitely is a factor. But Notre Dame only had 2 bench points and NC State only had 5. So these were the starting 5 going all out, playing balls to the walls and trying to get this W. I will also say in the loss, Hannah Hidalgo had 26 points. Sonia Citron, who's starting to get a lot of pub just for the things that she does on the court that aren't as the highlight of the night. But man, she had her own highlight. She had 23 points, including a tough 3-pointer with 0.6 seconds left in regulation to extend the game to overtime. Miles had 22 and Leah Tu King chipped in 15. I will say the last time that NC State beat a number 1 team at home was in 1978. So we have all sorts of records being broken this season. Another one, 100 points is the most scored versus an AP number 1 in the last 25 seasons. Ouch. I know. It makes me sad. I hate that it was on Notre Dame, but I think the caliber of this game was just insane. I mean, both teams were almost at 100 points. I mean, Sid, is it a lack of defense at that point, or are both teams just rolling offensively that it's just so competitive?
Yeah, I mean, the high scoring, it helps when you play an extra 10 minutes, extra quarter. So I think the scoring reflects a little bit of that. But honestly, I took some notes during this game, and one of the notes I have on here is neither team is getting stops when they need them. And I thought that was huge, especially in overtime. If Notre Dame and vice versa, same with NC State, if they got an extra stop or two, it doesn't go into that second overtime, doesn't even really go into overtime. And I just thought both teams lacked that defensive dominance. And that's kind of what you expect out of like a Notre Dame. You're number 1 in the country. You expect them to be able to play both sides of the floor, and you expect them to be able to shut down an NC State. And I'm not knocking NC State. They're a very good team. They played in the Final Four last year. They've been up and down a little bit this year. They're capable of hanging with Notre Dame. Obviously, they beat them. But it wasn't against a USC or a UCLA or some teams, Texas, some teams that Notre Dame really shut down and down the stretch when they needed to earlier in the season. So I was a little disappointed that maybe more so on the Notre Dame side that they weren't able to get some of those stops when it counted. And then on the flip side, watching it, I thought Niele down the stretch before it went into overtime, I really liked a play call that she had. There was about 23 seconds to go. They were down by 3. Ivy had called that timeout, and she drew up a play. It was a very basic clear out play. You could tell for Hidalgo to go down the right side and get a quick 2.
Yep.
And she did it in like 2 or 3 seconds, right? So now they're down by 1 with roughly 19, 20 seconds to go. Yes, it's NC State's ball, but I thought that was the right call. And I think Niele and most of these coaches at this level know that that's the right call, but to see it executed the way it was, and I was glad that she went to Hidalgo for that. But anyways, you fast forward, Andy commits a quick foul there. NC State heads to the free throw line, and they knock down both free throws. So now Notre Dame's down by 3 again with 17.3 seconds to go. And kudos to NC State, because at this point they were 18 for 18 from the free throw line. And they were 8 for 8, something like that down the stretch, like the last couple minutes of the game. If they don't knock down free throws like that, Notre Dame wins it.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was a sign of a good team where they were dialed in, they were focused, and they were able to knock down free throws like that. Again, maybe not a great team, though, if you're not getting the stops that you need to get down the stretch. But it's just interesting to look at both sides of the ball and what teams did what NC State did well and maybe what Notre Dame didn't and vice versa. And it's easy to look back and be like, oh, Notre Dame could have easily won this game if they would have done this. Like you always can do that, those type things. But it was a great game to watch. Like it was super entertaining. I thought when Sonia hit that shot, to me, I'm like, man, I just love watching her play. She's a competitor. She doesn't need all the flash and the extra hype. She just goes out there and kind of gets it done. And it shows that, and we've known this all season, but it shows how strong the Notre Dame guards are. Everyone likes to talk about Liv, and they like to talk about Hannah, and they should because they're two of the best guards in the country. But man, Citron can hang with them. She's just as good. I down the stretch like that, for her to hit that buzzer beater to send them to OT, that was just super fun to watch.
So a couple talking points and questions that I wanted to ask you, Sid. So I know when there was like 0.6 seconds left and like Sonia had the ball, I'm pretty sure NC State still had fouls to give. And everybody was kind of talking about, why wouldn't they foul? Why wouldn't they foul? What would you have done in that situation? Kind of walk us through if you would have fouled, like I mean, I know, but like the thought behind it in order to, not have the 3-ball, have a chance.
Yeah, they did have fouls to give, and Rebecca Lobo kept calling that out, right? Like, why aren't they fouling? And if you do foul there, then you get a chance to regroup. Potentially, you've got leaders on the court that want to talk and corral everyone together and kind of reset everything. But then it puts the ball out of bounds, and ultimately you're taking more time to get a good look. And so it would have disrupted Notre Dame's offense a little bit, where you see Citron kind of gets into a rhythm a little bit with some of those extra seconds as they tick down and gets that shot off. If they would have committed the foul a couple times, it's that much harder to get a shot off, I think. So to me, that was a big difference there. And I think the NC State coach was maybe thinking to himself, I trust my team. I trust their defense. Let's play good position defense and try to get the stop. And it wasn't an easy shot that Citron hit either. So kudos to that. That's the way that I interpreted that one. Did you see it any different?
No, I get and completely understand. I probably would have fouled just to have it reset. Like, as you mentioned previously, neither team got back-to-back stops when they really needed it. And that might be a lesson learned for both teams as we jump into conference play and tournament time. Normally, Notre Dame is pretty notorious for getting those stops, right? They really feed off of Hannah and Liv. I will also mention, I have to, I'm obviously a Notre Dame fan. The foul count was like pretty nutso. I'm not gonna throw hate or shade because I know when we played UConn, it was kind of similar. So I'm just gonna say, for the record, Notre Dame had 21 fouls while NC State only had 9 for the whole game. Keep in mind, folks, Hannah and Liv both fouled out within that second overtime, which means those two players alone, 10 fouls, had more than the whole NC State team. I do find that a little wild. I do know that plays into a factor the more you go into a third OT, a fourth OT, right? You're very cautious of that. You don't want that to happen. And also, I think that really limited how aggressive both those guards were, and it really allowed NC State to go on a 10-0 run at one point. So back-to-back stops early on definitely helped that. One thing I wanted to also get your opinion on, as I'm looking at the box score, and you have 5 players from NC State in double figures. If you notice, we have 4 players from ND in double figures. Do you know who was really quiet that game and maybe was just having an off night, or I don't know, maybe she was just like trying to see how she could get into a rhythm? Maddie Westbeld. She had 6 points. And when I was watching her play, it kind of seemed like she was trying to stay out of the way. But in reality, when the guards are attacking so much, I would have loved for her to just really fight for position and be like cleanup crew, because I think we missed shots. Hannah missed a lot of little bunnies that she normally makes. And whether that's just, the grind of the game, because this was an intense one, I would have loved for her to just, sometimes the offensive rebound putback can get you going in ways that you don't even know, mentally, everything. So I would have loved for her to try to peel out of that. I mean, she played 41 minutes. She had 3 boards and 6 points. It just seemed like a quiet night for her, which is a bit it's not really Maddie-like, So I don't know if there was something going on there. Maybe she didn't feel well, but all in all, this game was nuts. And it went into 2 overtimes. My blood pressure was through the roof. I was sweating, and we lost. So lesson learned. NC State killed it, played a great game. And I hope this is something that we can really take the hit on the chin, remember it. And as we go into these next 2 games to finish out ACC season before we go into the tournament, the conference tournament and actual March Madness, that we bring it with us.
Yeah, I think just wrapping it up from my end, a couple more things. I think the Maddie West belt, that's a really good call. That might actually be the difference in the game. She's got to bring more production, especially if you're going to play those type of minutes. And the NC State folks did, right? So I think there is a huge difference there. And then it's 2 things for me. One, I had asked you, a week and a half ago, okay, here's who's left on Notre Dame's schedule. Which one of these games gives you the most heartburn? And you called it. You were like, the NC State one, hands down, is the one. I mean, and all of them are tough. Like, they had Duke still to go. They still have Florida State. They still have Louisville. But you were like, man, that NC State game. And we've watched them play enough where we know that could be a potential matchup issue for Notre Dame. And it was at NC State. I think all that stuff factors in. The other thing that I wanted to say from my end, and yes, I live in South Bend. I went to grad school at Notre Dame, so I'm a little biased there. But I didn't play for Notre Dame, so it's maybe a little easier for me to kind of like step back, high level, 30,000 feet, look in. I don't think it's a bad loss for Notre Dame by any means.
Yeah.
I mean, NC State's a really good team. We talked about how they made the Final Four last year and how they're capable of competing against a lot of teams. They played a really tough schedule this year. So did Notre Dame. And they're a good team. I think they're maybe peaking at the right time here. We'll see how they finish things out. And for Notre Dame to lose this one at NC State in double overtime, I hope that they learn a lot from it and it makes them that much stronger heading into the conference tournament. Let's talk about the next couple of games. They've got to wrap this thing up and really turn it around fast. But if they can learn a lot from it heading into postseason, I just think that's maybe not a bad loss for them. It's going to be interesting to see how that shapes out.
Absolutely.
All right, Becca, we'll see how ND turns things around here. I have the faith that they will. They are a great team. So just interesting to see how they bounce back. Let's jump into our second half. We're going to talk through the new top 25. We're going to talk about the changes. Texas being the new number 1 with that Notre Dame loss. Very interesting to see that UConn and South Carolina are both out of the top 4 for the first time in how long?
Man, I don't even know.
Yeah,
I really don't.
That's one of your notes, Becca. I'm stealing that.
No, all good. Because I meant to go back and like do some like digging on that. But think about it. South Carolina has been the number 1 most of this. Well, UCLA has, but they've been a nice 1-2 the latest 3. And then UConn has been out of the top 5 for a bit, but they've slowly been creeping back in, and now they're at number 5. So, I mean, those 2 were the go-to schools for how long, that were always in the top of the rankings, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun to see some other teams mixing in there and breaking through that barrier. So if we walk through the top 10 and then a couple of the remainder 15 after that, Texas again at number 1, UCLA coming in at 2, Notre Dame at 3, USC at 4, UConn at 5, South Carolina 6, LSU at 7, North Carolina at 8, and NC State at 9, which we now know that Notre Dame win probably really helped them there. TCU at 10, Tennessee at 11. Kind of cool to see them climb some ranking spots there. Ohio State at 12, Oklahoma at 13. And then we really see that mixture of teams that we've seen for weeks now at the middle to the bottom half of the top 25. So no real shocks, I don't think, in the teams that we're looking at in this top 25. I think it's just interesting to see how teams are slated and how conferences maybe helped some but hurt others. And that's an interesting thing too. We see that every year, right? Just worth calling out.
I think one to just highlight is number 22, Creighton, right? I don't think we've talked about them much, if at all. And they're coming in 23-1 or 23-4. Sorry. I mean, slowly but surely moving up there. It'd be nice to see them make a splash, right? Get a couple upsets.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they're seated. I think if you fill out a women's basketball bracket this year, that might be a team that you're like, oh, Creighton, well, I'm going to pick the upset on this one.
And I do think that they're more of a solid team than people are realizing. We've seen them in the top 25 popping in and popping out a little bit, and they're back in it at 22 there. So that's a good call out to keep them circled maybe on your brackets. All right. So something that we're going to reference here is a previous poll from weeks ago and where the top 10 was. Maryland at this point weeks ago was number 10. We've seen them drop off significantly after a handful of injuries. Texas was at number 5 at that point. I think Texas has done a really good job in remaining in that top 5 and has slowly climbed up. And now obviously at that number 1 spot. I think that's an interesting one there. Oklahoma has dropped off a little bit. I think the SEC play as we all know and we talk about is tough. It's a tough conference to play in. So if you're not going to handle business at home and potentially lose some road games that you should win, I mean, that can really hinder you in any conference. And we've seen a little bit of that with Oklahoma. Kansas State was at number 9. We haven't talked a ton about Kansas State. They're at 14 now. They've kind of hovered around those spots. I think they are another team that is capable of winning a couple games in the NCAA tournament as well. So just really interesting to see how some of this has shaped out. UCLA has remained in that top 1 to 2 spot almost all year after they had beaten South Carolina. Just a really good testament to what they've done in their body of work so far this year. And then UConn, I mean, at this point, weeks in the past, they were ranked number 2 and they're ranked number 5 right now. I think they've continued to take care of business. They were down to like number 7 at one point, but now have really been able to capitalize on some of those losses with them playing in the Big East, which is quite frankly a weaker conference. They've been able to I think stay in that spot. But kudos to them because they have played some tough non-conference games here during conference play. And I think they have to because of how weak the Big East is. So just an interesting thing there. LSU has been pretty consistent as well in that top 10. I do have something that's interesting. It's something that I found and I want to read this. So it just speaks to the parity. We talk about that a ton. This year, it's the most parity I've seen in a long time. So bear with me as I read through this, but it just kind of speaks to what I'm talking about here. NC State lost to LSU. So this is all this year within this conference or within this season. So NC State lost to LSU. LSU lost to Texas. Texas lost to South Carolina. South Carolina lost to UConn. UConn lost to USC. USC lost to Notre Dame. Notre Dame lost to NC State. NC State lost to South Carolina. South Carolina lost to UCLA. UCLA lost to USC, and so on. So March is just going to be insane. I think.
Yeah, I think as you read through that, I was like, it's anybody's game. It's anybody's. I mean, honestly, we can talk about our top 4 and who we think's going to make it, but you never know. And it's March, which makes it even more. It just has a sprinkle of crazy added to it, so anything can happen. That's nuts.
It is nuts. It's just going to be really interesting to see who can dial in. And playing for Pat, I remember in the tournament, and we'd get to postseason, she would tell us, because there's a lot of pressure and you're expected to perform, especially if you're in the top 5 or you're a number 1 seed, right? You do have that target on your back, like we talked about. But she would say, we just got to win by 1.
Yeah.
So if you get down in the first half and you're thinking to yourself, man, we're down by 8, 10 points, the game's not over, right? You haven't lost it yet. You just got to come back and win that second half by 11 points or whatever it is to win by 1. Like it puts things into perspective because it's survive and advance. You win by 1 point. Yeah, you want to learn from maybe that tight game that maybe shouldn't have been tight, but you advance, and that's what it's all about. So it's just interesting to see who's going to be able to put those games together in the tournament.
No, absolutely. I think you want to win, advance, and kind of forget about it. But if it's a game that gets close, teams are scouting you. So they're scouting you 24/7 in the wins. So it's if they see something that maybe you're weak at, you quickly address it, make a change, make sure the team understands and notices, and then you move on and hope that you can execute on it when you play a team, right? So I agree. It's going to be crazy.
It's going to be crazy. All right, so let's talk about some of the remaining conference games that we've got coming up before next week, because next week we'll start the conference tournament. Crazy. We're getting to postseason. It's amazing. But we'll see which teams finish strong here in these last remaining conference regular season games. So on Saturday, number 4, USC plays at UCLA at 9 p.m. Eastern time. This is a big one, really.
Yeah. This is the game. The fact that they play twice in 1 year, in one season, is amazing. And it's within almost a month, even better.
This is this grunge. That's the grunge match for you at UCLA, and now they're going to be at home, so that's going to be a good one. Sunday, there are a slew of games that are worth tuning into. Number 3, Notre Dame plays number 25, Louisville at Notre Dame. This is college game day. It's at noon Eastern time. Becca will be at this one in the flesh.
Yep. Shout out. I'll be there.
Shout out. Number 15, Kentucky at number 6, South Carolina at 2 p.m. Eastern. Number 20, Alabama at number 13, Oklahoma at 2:30 Eastern time. Number 12, Ohio State at number 19, Maryland, 4:30 Eastern time. Number 16, Duke at number 24, Florida State at 6 p.m. Eastern. And then the last one we wanted to talk about was number 10, TCU at number 17, Baylor at 6:30 Eastern time. A ton of games. And these are all the games that we pulled out here. It's a ranked matchup. So it's a ranked team versus a ranked team. So I think it's just going to be a lot of games on Sunday. Just turn that TV on and keep it rolling.
Yeah, and there's not been anybody who's fully won out conference of the regular season yet. So I think these games being two ranked opponents kind of towards the end of that season anyway, it's going to be super important to get wins here and go into the conference tournament strong. So it's going to be a battle on both sides without a doubt. So let's jump into our overtime. This one is a bit sentimental. It's an awesome accomplishment, but my GOAT, who I picked when we did our GOATs of the game, Diana Taurasi, has announced she is retiring. Obviously, Diana Taurasi has been a huge impact on the women's game. She brings a sense of feistiness. She always competes. It doesn't matter how old she is, where she is, what she's doing. When she steps on the court, she means business. I'm just going to quickly highlight some ginormous accomplishments. If I went into all the stats or with points and rebound, I mean, it would be insane. High level, right? 3 NCAA national championships at UConn. 3 WNBA championships at the Phoenix Mercury. Played her entire 20 years in the WNBA at and with the Phoenix Mercury. 20 years in the WNBA. I think she's one of
20 years. Like, how does your body even do it? It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely insane. You know, Unrivaled is going on. She mentioned in one of her interviews she did today that she was thinking about going to the championship game for Unrivaled. And the funny part is the media and marketing team at Unrivaled interviewed everybody and asked them, what's your favorite Diana Taurasi story? And almost every single person mentions she punched me in the stomach. She chopped me in the throat. She clipped me in the lane. And that's just her style. And it's no harm, no foul, right? I mean, some people might have been harmed, but you know, it's just the way she set the precedent in the WNBA and just for her, how she attacked the game in itself. She always showed it respect, worked out every day. One thing she mentioned was just saying, you know, she wants to spend time with her family. She has a son and a daughter now. And mentioned that her wife, Penny, had been holding it down as the head coach, and she's been the begrudged assistant coach sitting in the stands. So now she's ready to kind of help and tag team there as well. But an amazing career for Diana. She's absolutely changed the game. We always say anybody from the WNBA, they continue to build on top of the shoulders of the others. So I just think she's one that's memorable, legendary, and has absolutely impacted the women's game. And the last thing I'm going to say about it before I pass it to you, one other thing that I absolutely loved when referencing the WNBA, they mentioned that the change and the attraction to it, it's not a moment, it's a movement. So we're not, this isn't a one-time thing. This is kind of where the standard is and how we're going to go forward, and let's keep it rocking and rolling. So shout out DT for being awesome for forever.
An absolute GOAT. 20 years in the WNBA. I just keep going back to that, all with the Phoenix Mercury. Just amazing. It speaks to what she was able to do year after year. 3 championships at UConn, 3 championships, Phoenix Mercury. We talk about GOATs needing those championships under their belt.
Mm-hmm.
God knows she went out and got them 4 Olympic gold medals. I mean, what a career. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I will be interested to see if after she has some downtime, and I'm not going to put a time limit on it, but I will be interested to see if she gets into coaching and possibly, who knows, if she replaces Gino when he's ready to step down.
Oh
Just
my
throwing it out there.
gosh.
Throwing it out there. I'm going to put it out there, see what happens.
The Boneyard Huskies would be pumped. That Husky tribe would be ready to, would love that, I think. Can you imagine? There's like her or Sue Bird would be probably amazing for them. But Diana Taurasi coming back and coaching, even if she was on an assistant, like Simone Augustus, when I see her on the bench for LSU, I'm like, gosh, that is so cool.
Yeah.
But Diana Taurasi would be amazing. So who knows? We'll see. All right, let's wrap it up for today. Our first half, we talked about the number 1 Irish at the time falling to NC State. Our second half, we talked about the mix-ups and the shifts within that top 25. And then our overtime was all about DT, Diana Taurasi retiring. Great episode, Becca.
Yeah, a lot of stuff, a lot of moving pieces here as we wrap up season. Excited to see how it all plays out. Get into conference and then into March Madness. Let's do it.
Let's do it. We do have a fun team huddle that will be dropping on Monday. So go ahead and download that, listen to that. I think it's going to be a really cool one. We have a special guest that's joining us who played at the University of Michigan, and she was a standout player for them. So it's going to be fun to interview her and have you all listen and follow along with the conversation.
See you, Sid.
See ya.
That's the 28.5 final buzzer for today's episode. Don't forget to hit follow and download on your preferred podcast platform to catch every play-by-play. New episodes drop each week throughout the season.
If you've enjoyed our courtside chat, drop us a review or follow us on our social media accounts where you can send us questions that may be selected for our Team Huddle Q&A episodes. And remember, from females who have played the game, the size of the ball matters.